This is Dave Jones with StormCenter Communications and GeoCollaborate. It is Wednesday, October 9th, 2024, and this is the day where Milton impacts the state of Florida. Milton is currently a Category 4 hurricane with winds of 145 miles per hour. This update is being provided for the All Hazards Consortium, the sensitive information sharing environment, so we can share information across private sector organizations such as communication, logistics, food, fuel, transportation sectors, and emergency operations centers in the states. Their private sector liaisons work very closely to help support the movement of commerce. So we have Hurricane Milton, and a lot has happened over the last 12 hours since my update last night. We had the pressure bottoming out again last night with a very small eye. And now that Milton, as forecast, has started its northeastward turn, it's interacting now with some strong shear from the southwest. Shear is stronger winds at the upper levels, about 10,000 feet or so, that can disrupt the circulation of storms. Milton, however, is so strong, Category 5 and then now a Category 4 hurricane, it is not going to be that affected by this shear. The presentation meteorologically is a little bit more ragged than we've seen over the last 12 hours. You can't see the eye of Milton anymore. We notice a little bit of dry air that's coming in the southwest side of the storm. But there's so much momentum and energy built up in Milton. It looks like it's going to make landfall as a major hurricane just south of Tampa Bay very soon. Around 8 o'clock to midnight tonight is when expected landfall is. And I do want to point out some things. You can see the circulation here, strong thunderstorms, and thunderstorms wrapping around the center there. You can see the shear that's taking these clouds off to the northeast. If you're in the beaches of South Carolina, Myrtle Beach or something, some locations there, southern Outer Banks, you can see those cirrus clouds streaming overhead. That's some of the blow off of Hurricane Milton. But the real action is here. We're already having storms on the outer bands impact South Florida, and we've already had some tornado warnings issued in Florida. We'll check that out in just a few minutes when I dive into GeoCollaborate and we take a look at any active warnings going on. But I do want to take this full screen and show you what's going on. And while I'm talking about this, down the bottom scroll, I have put in there the high tides, the next high tides at various beaches on the west coast of Florida. My next update, I'll talk about high tides on the east coast of Florida up into Georgia and South Carolina, because we have storm surge warnings in effect right now along the west coast. But here's what we have right now. This is Milton. Let me throw on the current stats. As a matter of fact, at noon, the National Hurricane Center just updated these statistics. So this update is being done about 12:12. These updates were sent out about 9 minutes ago from the National Hurricane Center. It's located about 175 miles southwest of Tampa, 150 miles west-southwest of Fort Myers, Florida. Maximum winds, 145 miles per hour. That's a Category 4 hurricane. And the movement is northeast at 17. Notice it has picked up in its speed of movement. It's getting a little bit further northern latitude, but at the same time, it's encountering shear that's going to be directing it. And then it's going to be interacting with the frontal system that is going to increase the wind speeds to the north of the landfall of this system. So that's another thing that we'll be talking about here in just a minute. Pressure, 931 millibars. So it's come up pretty significantly from the overnight surface pressures that we've had. But that indeed is still a major hurricane. So what I'd like to do now is show you the 1-minute satellite imagery. This is every minute. We've talked about this the last several updates, and it is incredible, this technology that we can take images every minute from 22,300 miles up in geostationary orbit. That's where the NOAA GOES satellite is. And you can see here, let me take the statistics off here just for a second. There we go. You can see over here, this is Miami down here, and you can see the Florida Keys stretching down. This is the basically the Everglades here, then Naples, and we get up into Fort Myers Beach, Punta Gorda up in here, and then Tampa is up this way. But you can see the low-level clouds streaming in off of the coast of Miami, so that circulation is already creating pretty strong, gusty at time winds coming in from the south and southeast into the east coast of Florida. But you can see this circulation right here. This is it. This is the core of the storm right here with those winds of 145 miles per hour, with tropical storm force winds already reaching the coast of South Carolina. Let me pull this down. The coast of Florida, not South Carolina. Now you can see Tampa. This is Tampa Bay right here, and there are some very strong thunderstorms just offshore and some that are moving on. It's been a rainy morning and a rainy night in Florida, but now it's getting more intense rainfall going on. Let me switch over real quickly to the radar data, and this is radar in Tampa, outside of in Tampa Bay, and you can see from its scan that it's actually picking up the center of the hurricane. Now, this is about 25 or 26,000 feet up in the air because the beam coming out of the radar in Tampa goes up at an angle. And so by the time it gets all the way out here, it's pretty high up. However, what we can see, and I'll zoom in here just a little bit, are very strong thunderstorms already impacting Cape Coral, already impacting Punta Gorda, North Point, Sarasota. You're going to be in it here shortly, and Bradenton with these heavy thunderstorms, some of them remaining offshore. But as I zoom in here a little bit more, you can see these waves of very intense rainfall. So in Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, the winds right now are coming in this way, and you're already starting to see some rises in water. Fortunately, it's low tide right now, which is great. Keep in mind, scrolling at the bottom of the screen are the next high tides in some of these locations. So this is the center of the hurricane just down off the screen here. I'll move it up. And this is the eye wall. This is what we fear. Any hurricane chasers try to aim for this, but this is not an eye wall that you want to try to survive when it makes landfall. This is like a buzzsaw. And winds around this, 145 miles per hour. And so we're going to be monitoring the storm, obviously, as it keeps moving towards the Florida coastline, but we're seeing broad impacts already within the west coast of Florida. And we said yesterday in the late evening update that we would see tropical storm force winds moving in afternoon around 2 o'clock or so. We're already receiving tropical storm force wind gusts in some of these areas. Here's Tampa and St. Petersburg. There's heavy rain moving through, these rain squalls with strong gusty winds. And that's what happens when a hurricane moves towards land. You have outer bands. The winds are very strong up at above about 5,000 feet up. But when you have heavy rain pouring down, it can drive those strong winds down to the surface. And that is why you can get tropical storm force winds in these outer bands. Over here around Lake Okeechobee, look at this. I'm not going to cover all this. This isn't live weather coverage, but we have tornado warnings issued around Lake Okeechobee, numerous tornado warnings. So this is in the sector called the dirty side of a hurricane, which is the northeast side from the direction of movement. So this area right here is a dirty side, can produce multiple tornadoes. And it is doing that right now. These are radar indicated tornadoes. They can touch down, they can pick up, they can be rain wrapped. You may not be able to see them, but certainly there are tornadoes happening and tornado warnings being issued by the National Weather Service right now as we monitor Milton as it starts to impact the state of Florida. So I want to go over to GeoCollaborate here full screen because I have a number of things that I want to talk about here. This is GeoCollaborate. I have on again the Goes East Sandwich product that allows me to take a look at some of the circulation here and the bubbles in the atmosphere. Look at this. This is really bubbling out, and you can see what's going on. Some of the data coming in as we speak. But what I want to do is you can see these thunderstorms and these higher cloud tops. These are heavy storms that I just showed you on radar. Well, I'm going to take away this satellite picture because I want to focus on a couple of other things. And you can see these tornado warnings. These are the ones that I just showed you on the radar that are also appearing in GeoCollaborate. So these are active tornado warnings issued by the Weather Service. This big box, what's this? Out here in the ocean? Well, if I turn on the radar data within GeoCollaborate, you will see that there are storms there and outer bands. So this is the radar data in GeoCollaborate. You can see the eye here. This is a special marine warning that's been issued in a very large, broad area because of the spiral bands coming through here. Hopefully, no mariners, no boaters are out there in the Gulf of Mexico right now because it's quite stormy and the waves are building up. And that is the next thing that I would like to talk about here just for a moment. Remember yesterday, I told you that the Hurricane Hunter aircraft dropped out of the aircraft these wave drifters. Look at this. They dropped them right in a line parallel with the Florida coast to let Milton intersect these buoys. These weren't here several days ago. These are brand new. 15 minutes after they hit the ocean, after they hit the Gulf of Mexico, data started transmitting into GeoCollaborate, and we were able to monitor the wave heights. So I'm going to start down here at this one in the south, and we're going to take a look at this data together. I haven't looked at it recently. So here's one right here. I'm going to click on that. Let me just take this a little bit further so everybody can see it when I click on it. This is a DWS drifter, 15.1 foot waves. 15-foot waves out here now. And that is about a little southeast of the center. The winds are howling towards the coast here, 15-foot waves, at a period of 7.5 seconds. If we move a little bit closer to the storm, these are 18.1 foot waves, 18.1 at a period of 8.4 seconds. This is, and the sea surface temperature, 85. We don't have to worry about this storm being knocked down by cold sea surface temperatures. They are not in existence in the Gulf of Mexico. It has been a record year for sea surface temperatures. It has been a terrible ocean heat content for these storms. I'm moving up to this DWS drifter here, 20.7 foot waves, 20.7 at a period of 8.55 seconds. So you're saying, so these are big waves. Are these waves going to be impacting the coast? Yes, they will be. The shallower the water gets, the more these waves will build up. So as this storm, Hurricane Milton, gets closer to these buoys, we're going to see a dramatic increase in the wave sizes, and we're going to be watching this throughout the day. This one here is a 17.9 foot wave, and they're all about an 8-second, 7.5 to 8-second period, which is pretty fast, pushing this water towards the coastline. 16.6 feet, the significant wave height right now, and these are heading towards the coastline. These wave heights are heading towards the coast. And when you think about it, when you think of surge, there are storm surge warnings all along the west coast of Florida. storm surge warnings, and we're going to talk about how much storm surge is impacted. But when you hear about a storm surge of, let's say, 5 to 10 feet coming towards the land and inundating the coastal areas, you have to add the wave heights on top of that. The wave heights are wind-driven, and the waves build up because of the underlying bathymetry, the floor of the sea. When you have tidal surge coming in, normally dry ground becomes the floor of the sea, and the winds can build up waves on top of that. That's why it's so important to have these buoys down here. This is just a tremendous effort by the folks at the National Hurricane Center and Scripps Institute of Oceanography out in California. 16.6 foot waves there, 15-foot waves, and as we get a little bit further, 11.6 foot waves, and even further, 9.2 foot waves. So this is very, very consistent. All of these observations are working. This is great because I'm going to turn on the other buoys that we have from NOAA, from the Operational National Weather Service buoys. And some of these buoys, let's see if they're taking on any waves. We have wind gusts now. Look at this. In this buoy here, wind gust of 44.7 knots. That's well into tropical storm force. 33 knots. The winds are steady right now at this buoy. So the tropical storm force winds are moving towards the shore and are inland now. So we're starting the clock for impacting the coast of Florida. These are the core of the winds. Remember, I showed you the initial wind field radii. Let me turn that back on, and then I'll go look at a couple more of these buoys. So you can just see how all of this data works together to give us a picture for what's going on. So the initial wind radii is right here. I'm turning that on. Whoa. Look at that. I'm going to have to zoom out here a little bit so you can see this whole thing. This is the initial wind radii of Hurricane Milton. We told you, remember, the wind radii was going to increase, probably double in size when Milton was down near the northern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. This is more than double. This is a little bit more than the wind radii was before. It's twice as much, if not a little bit more. So you can see the tropical storm force winds are reaching the coastline of Florida right now. And this is the forecast track. So you can see, you can envision, I'll take all this off, turn off all these layers, and we'll just focus on the wind field, because I know I've gotten some comments and questions about Tampa Bay and all the water maybe being pushed out because the storm might be making landfall south of Tampa Bay. Well, the wind field is large enough where we're still going to have storm surge in Tampa Bay. It may not be as large, and in some areas, the water may be driven out when the storm passes, but we still have a major storm surge possibility in Tampa Bay. You can't put it any other way. I hope everyone evacuated when you had the chance to. This is a major Category 4 hurricane. You can see the wind field, and this is the core of the storm. This orange area here, this is the buzzsaw that's going to cause the damage across the entire state of Florida as it exits during the day tomorrow. So we have a long night to go through, and we have tomorrow to go through as well, and we'll be doing more periodic updates because I don't want to issue videos that are 41 minutes long again, even though you might continue to watch it. It's just, it's a little bit long. But we're going to talk about impacts here as this storm approaches Florida. And so I'm going to start to turn off some data layers. I'm going to turn off the weather radar data. So that's now gone. I'm going to turn on the current warnings. There we go. I'm going to leave the buoy data on there, and I'll turn off the wind radii for now. We may go back to that, but I may turn off the wind. I'm going to turn off the wind radii, initial wind radii right now, because we have a lot of other things to focus on. You can see the cone and the track. This cone represents the likelihood that the center of the storm is going to move between this line to the north, which encompasses Tampa Bay, and this line to the south, just north of, crossing Port Charlotte. So these are where the likely impacts are going to be from the center of the storm, but we're going to have broad impacts well away from the storm. And I'll zoom out here just a little bit. You can see what these colors are. The colors that I have shown you right now are the peak surge. And I'm going to turn on here the legend for the peak surge so you can follow around with me to see what it looks like. In the blue area here around the Big Bend, that area is up to 3 feet of surge that is possible with Milton coming ashore to the south. In the yellow area, that is up to 6 feet of storm surge. So this area could see a 6-foot storm surge. I hope you moved away from the coastline. It's getting too late to do that now. And most bridges close when winds reach tropical storm force. Some bridges close at 35 miles per hour as far as winds go. So if you waited to evacuate, now it's time to hunker in place. Because the storm is getting closer. The real big impacts will start to be felt around 6 o'clock tonight, and then it's going to be rock and roll all night. We have some advice for you a little bit later in this update. So in Tampa Bay, as I zoom into Tampa Bay here, you can see the storm surge is still in the red area. That red area is up to 12 feet of storm surge. See this? 8 to 12 feet. When I click on it, it pops up. And so this is a significant storm surge. Keep in mind, the eye is large. So it's going to impact. The water that's here is going to be pushed up further towards Safety Harbor here and Oldsmar. So the water is going to be forced this way. Not all the water is going to have an opportunity to leave Tampa Bay when the storm makes landfall. When it gets further inland and it's from the northwest, that's going to start pushing water out of Tampa Bay and lowering the storm surge. But as it's coming in, we have strong winds from the southeast and then the east, and it's going to be piling water up in these areas. So pay attention to the National Hurricane Center's storm surge warning. That means get away from the coastline because these are deadly storm surges. Now, a little bit further to the south here, we have the pink, and the pink is 12 up to 12 feet of storm surge. This is going to cause tremendous damage in the area of in this area. There's just so many towns. There's Siesta Key, there's Longboat Key, and it looks like, I'm going to just click on this to just verify that the tidal surge has stayed 10 to 15 feet. So in the pink legend, it says 12 feet or more. This area was impacted by Hurricane Helene, and the storm surges of 6 feet caused a lot of damage. Drove a lot of sand inland, and they had to take bulldozers to collect that sand. They couldn't put it back on the beach to build dunes because they have to test that sand for contamination. And then once that sand is cleared for contamination, they can put it back on the beach. Well, it's way too soon to be able to put it back on the beach now. They haven't been able to test it. So that sand is gone, and this perpendicular landfall of a hurricane is not just going to drive sand over the roads. It's going to wash the roads away. The pounding surf and the winds and the high storm surge is going to wash these roads away. Access to many of these barrier islands will be cut off from the storm. So we're talking about Venice. We're talking about Sarasota, and I mentioned Siesta Key. These areas here, Inglewood, down towards Port Charlotte and Charlotte Harbor. This is Charlotte here and Punta Gorda. All these areas are in the storm surge area of 8 to 12 feet in Charlotte Harbor, and along the coastline, 10 to 15 feet. So it is going to be a devastating hurricane. There is nothing we can do but warn everyone and explain what's going on. So remember, I'll bring the radius of maximum wind, initial radius. So we're tracking the wind radii live. How can we track this size? You might be wondering. Well, we have airplanes that are flying through. Remember, we talked about the Hurricane Hunter aircraft that are flying through the storm. They fly through the eye like this. Let me just move this a little bit further, and I'll zoom out just a little bit so you can see it more clearly. The planes fly through the eye like this. They take readings, wind readings, pressure readings. Then they curve like this, and then they turn back and go through the eye again. It's like taking a CAT scan of the hurricane, and they come through it. I wouldn't want to do it, but these folks are heroes going through these storms to put themselves at risk. Their lives are at risk going through all that turbulence, and it's not fun. Some people enjoy it. I don't enjoy it. I've never done it. I've been invited to, but glad I haven't yet. So the storm surge is being pushed by this wind. It's being pushed. Remember, counterclockwise winds, and the winds are blowing around here this way, coming into the coastline, and it's building up the water. Now, fortunately, again, it's low tide in many of these areas right now. The tides and the next high tides are scrolling at the bottom of the screen. So we're going to see tidal surges down here around Naples. These tidal surges 5 to 8 feet. That's going to cause significant damage. And then tidal surges farther to the south. But look at this. I'm going to go over to the east coast of Florida here for a moment, because we are going to have tidal surges, because when Milton crosses the state, the winds are going to be coming in and forcing water in to create surges. And we're talking about storm surges all the way south of Palm Bay. So we're talking here at the border of Indian River County and Brevard County, all the way north. Storm surges, which includes the Space Coast, of 3 to 5 feet. That's going to cause a lot of erosion, a lot of cliffs in the beach area there, taking a lot of sand away. Homes may be damaged because the winds are going to be quite strong in this area. Even up towards Daytona Beach now, it looks like the wind field is going to increase, and Daytona Beach is under threat of even getting hurricane force winds when the storm passes through because of this interaction with the frontal system. And we do have one of the nation's second largest IV manufacturers for hospitals located in Daytona Beach, and we're monitoring that because the largest factory was in Asheville, North Carolina, and it was totally destroyed. So we're monitoring that for potential shortages around the country in the next month or so of IVs. Hurricanes have had their eyes on some critical infrastructure that we need to keep operating in this country. Peak storm surge up towards Georgia and South Carolina, 2 to 4 feet here, and 1 to 3 feet, including Charleston and North Charleston, Charleston Harbor, up to about Myrtle Beach. So this is a very large circulation, and we're going to be dealing with this for the next 24 to 36 hours. We have hurricane warnings all along the West Coast and all along the East Coast as well. There's a hurricane watch up towards Jacksonville, but all of the state of Florida is basically under a hurricane warning. And I'm going to just go and verify this. I'm going to turn off the peak surge, and I'm going to keep the warnings on. I'm going to turn off all these buoys, We're not talking about them right now. And this is the benefit of having geospatial data that we can turn on and off as various layers. So I have the wind field on there, and I have also the forecast track. So the red area are hurricane warnings that goes all the way down to Port St. Lucie. And then we have out here, south of this, we have a tropical storm warning south for West Palm Beach, all along down towards Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale, and Boca Raton, Pompano Beach, Miami, Homestead. Tropical storm warnings are in effect there, and even out towards the coast, the southwest coast around Naples. Now, let me just verify what's in effect here for Naples, because I want to get that right. And I'm just going over here and taking a look at the National Hurricane Center update, their public advisory. And we have a hurricane watch in effect for Lake Okeechobee. So the hurricane watch is in effect for Collier County. It's not a hurricane warning, the hurricane watch. There's also a tropical storm warning for the Florida Keys. So this purple area for Naples is a tropical storm warning, and a tropical storm warning also in effect for Lake Okeechobee. So this is a tropical storm warning and a hurricane watch. There's so many watches and warnings in effect right now. I'm not going to display them. It would just take me another hour to go through them. And I just want to cover impacts to critical infrastructure and what's going on with this storm because it's so significant. Now, I'm going to back out here one more time, and I want to talk about inland threats. I'm going to turn off the hurricane watches and warnings that the National Hurricane Center has issued. I'll keep the wind radii in there because it's just such a massive visual to see. And I'm going to bring that up right here like this. And I'll zoom out just a little bit more so you can see it more clearly. Look just how large that wind radii is. So the first thing I want to talk about is the arrival of tropical storm force winds across the state. That is here, and I'm turning that on, and it's going to be moving across the state fairly quickly. The storm has actually picked up in motion. It's moving fairly quickly now. Remember, I turned on the stats. I don't want to confuse the screen. Let me just turn off the tropical storm arrival, and I'll turn on the tropical storm force, the tropical storm stats. So it's moving northeast at 17 miles per hour. It's picking up speed because it's interacting with that wind shear and that frontal system. So it's not like Harvey where it's going to just sit and linger, but it is going to drop a lot of rain, and it is going to move across the state. And I want to explain one other thing as we talk about the movement, and that is the arrival of the tropical storm force winds. So here we are with the tropical storm force winds. They're arriving right now through Tampa and St. Petersburg. It says about 2 o'clock. It's 12:42 right now on the East Coast, so about now. And we've already had wind gusts to tropical storm force and some of these heavy downpours. By Wednesday, 8 p.m. tonight, we're talking about Central Florida, the winds moving through, and then getting to the East Coast by 2 in the morning. So those of you who are in the path, even well inland in Florida, you are going to have a very shaky night because the winds are going to pick up. They're going to be very gusty. And then when the center part of the storm comes through, it's going to be very disturbing. You're going to hear very strong howling winds, and some of you are going to feel like your houses or your buildings are starting to move. Just make sure you get into the center room. I have some advice for you towards the end of this update. But as the hurricane moves towards Florida, these are the times where the tropical storm force winds are going to arrive. So let's just say this is now, then 8 o'clock. And when I say now, you can see the clocks in the upper right-hand corner. So So 12:43, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's good forecast by the Hurricane Center for the arrival. Wednesday at 8 p.m., Thursday 2 a.m. 2 a.m. We're talking about the arrival of tropical storm force winds. I'll back out for those of you who are perhaps live a little bit further north. And it's good to show this as well because we're going to be interacting, the storm is going to be interacting with the frontal system, and it looks like the wind field is going to expand, and even hurricane force winds may move a little bit further north because of the interaction of these two weather systems. So we're talking about Thursday at 2 a.m. arriving Gainesville, and a little bit later in the morning, Jacksonville and along the Palm Coast. But by Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, everybody will be under at least tropical storm force winds everywhere and hurricane force winds in this core area. Let me zoom in here to where the storm is expected to be close to landfall. And that is at this point, the 12-hour forecast for the Hurricane Milton, is at 8 o'clock tonight to be in this position. Well, look at the radius. Hurricane force winds will be moving onshore in part of Florida at 8 o'clock tonight. So that's why I mentioned 8 o'clock to midnight is landfall time for this hurricane. Officially, what's a landfall? It's when the center of the storm, the eye, crosses the coastline. The National Hurricane Center will issue a special statement saying Milton has made landfall. They'll say a specific location, which I don't particularly like, because the storm is so large, it doesn't make landfall in a particular little town or a street. It makes landfall in a huge area, and a huge area is going to be impacted. So the landfall looks like it's going to happen between 8 o'clock and midnight tonight. Look at the winds, 125 miles per hour. Sorry, you can't see that. I'll raise that up a little bit here. This is 125 miles per hour with winds gusting to 155 miles per hour. We're talking about a Category 3 hurricane making landfall with Category 4 wind gusts. That's the forecast. And I just want to show you the wind probabilities, and I'll zoom out after I turn this on, because the wind probabilities are going to create a good visual for where damage is going to be. This is the probability that you will receive, or these areas will receive tropical storm force winds. The areas in purple, greater than 90%. A greater than 90% chance that these areas will see tropical storm force winds. That's 39 miles per hour to 74 miles per hour. 39 to 74. I'm going to turn off these probabilities, and look, see, your probabilities go all the way up to Jacksonville. Your probabilities are lower, which is great. And down in Miami, your probability is lower. You may get some tropical storm force wind gusts and some showers and some storms, but it looks like the extreme southern tip of Florida, not the Keys. The Keys are windy, and it's still stormy. That's not a good place to be. But Miami looks like it's going to be just fine for impacts. And so I want to turn off these probabilities because I want to talk about potential damage and impacts now. And these impacts are happening obviously because of the speed of movement of the storm and the direction that the storm is moving. This is the official National Weather Service wind threat. This is a wind threat, meaning, and I will recap this in just a few minutes when I end this update. This wind threat, and I can click on this because this is a geographic information system, GeoCollaborate is. If I click on this purple, this whole area is outlined. You can see that. That includes this purple area here in St. Pete and up towards Clearwater. Structural damage to sturdy buildings, some with complete roof and wall failures. Complete destruction of mobile homes, damage greatly accentuated by large airborne projectiles. Locations may be uninhabitable for weeks or months. This is a very large area and impacts a lot of people. If you're in areas such as inland and hospitals or retirement facilities, assisted living facilities. Those are built up to certain codes and standards, so evacuations don't have to happen and you can remain safe in those buildings. But they're not evacuation shelters. There are additional evacuation shelters out there, and if you're in individual homes or homes or condos, and you're anywhere close to the coast that are in evacuation zones, I hope you left, because this is nothing to play with. You have never experienced a Category 3 hurricane making landfall in this area. You haven't, because it hasn't happened in a long time. And look at this damage, even up into Tampa. That's expected as well. Numerous large trees snapped or uprooted, along with fences and roadways, signs blown over. Many roads impassable from large debris. Widespread power and communication outages. This, along with the expected storm surge in Tampa Bay, is going to cause big problems. And that's why these products are issued, so we can give people an indication of what to expect. We just hope that people listen to what the meteorologists and the emergency managers are saying, and don't want to stick around saying, hey, I'd love to see this storm, or I can't leave. There are many of you that can leave. There are free Uber rides that you can call, and Uber will come pick you up and take you out. Also call your local authorities. There's still a little bit of time to get out if you still haven't left. In the red area here, this is the red area. This is all along this area here. Potential impacts include considerable roof damage to sturdy buildings, with some having window, door, and garage door failures. That's one of the things that leads to catastrophic collapse of a home, is if the garage door gets blown in and the wind gets in there and gets to lift up the ceiling and the roof. Damage accentuated by airborne projectiles. Locations may be uninhabitable for weeks. Many large trees snapped or uprooted, along with fences and roadway signs blown over. Some roads impassable from large debris, and large areas with power and communication disruptions. That is this red area and across the entire state. It also impacts where we launch all of the rockets from the Kennedy Space Center and the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. This is where all the launch pads are. So this is impacting the coastline from Tampa to the Space Coast, which is high impact. Port Charlotte, you were hit in Hurricane Charlie. There's going to be significant storm surge coming in, as well as in Naples. So please just heed the warnings and get out of there. Hopefully you have done that already. Now, what about those of you that are outside of this area, in the yellow area, where winds could reach tropical storm force winds? A little bit less likely, but there's damage to porches, awnings, carports, and sheds, lightweight objects blown about. That's also down in southeast Florida, too. So it doesn't look like the risk is very high. Some branches, things like that, you've seen that in summer storms. But in this orange area, and this red area, and the purple area, you could see some significant damage, especially mobile homes, if they're unanchored. Unsecured lightweight objects become dangerous projectiles. And this is one area that we're concerned with. When the storm comes inland, I mentioned it's going to interact with a frontal system, and the winds to the north of the storm could get stronger. That includes in Orlando and north. In this area here, we could see higher winds approaching hurricane force because of the dynamics involved in interaction of a hurricane with the frontal system. This is kind of hanging out there, but it does have, the wind is blowing at about 10,000 feet, about 75 miles per hour. So we could see some additional wind damage to the north as some of those winds get drawn down. So this is the wind damage. I want to talk now about turning that off, talk about the coastal threats, because the wind drives the coastal threats, right? The wind is the driver. Imagine that, right? The wind is pushing the water, keeps pushing the water in towards the coast, into all the nooks and crannies, into the bays, into Tampa Bay, into Port Charlotte, Charlotte Harbor. So these areas here are under threat of surge. And so I want to click on these purple areas just so you can see the potential impacts. And I should click on the right one here. Potential impacts. Widespread deep inundation with storm surge flooding greatly accentuated by powerful battering waves. Structural damage to buildings with many washing away. Damage greatly compounded from considerable floating debris. Locations may be uninhabitable for an extended period. Remember I talked earlier, this perpendicular impact of this storm will wash roads away. It won't just cover them with sand. Nearshore escape routes and secondary roads washed out or severely flooded. Flood control systems and barriers may become stressed. Extreme beach erosion, new shoreline cuts possible. Massive damage to marinas, docks, boardwalks, and piers. Numerous small craft broken away from moorings, with many lifted onshore and stranded. And that is in this purple area from Tampa Bay all the way down to Bonita Springs. Down here around Naples, this area. I'll scroll up a little bit here so you can see that where I clicked. Large areas of deep inundation with storm surge flooding accentuated by battering waves. Remember what I said? The wind will drive waves on top of the storm surge. So if you have a 10-foot storm surge or a 5-foot storm surge and you have 10-foot waves, you have 15 feet of water that's going to be pounding against structures because we have to include the waves. Large sections of nearshore escape routes and secondary roads washed out or severely flooded. Flood control systems and barriers may become stressed. Now, this is just on the West Coast. We also have impacts on the East Coast, particularly up in the Jacksonville area as well. This orange area, areas of inundation with storm surge flooding accentuated by waves, damage to buildings, mainly near the coast. Sections of nearshore escape routes and secondary roads become weakened or washed out. So this is up in Jacksonville. Why is that? Because when the storm gets over here, the circulation is counterclockwise and the winds are going to be blowing directly in to the coast. That means it's going to force water right up here into the river. This is the St. Johns River in Jacksonville, and it's going to pile the water up into the St. Johns River. That, combined with rainfall that wants to drain, will cause flooding along the St. Johns River. I think you're very familiar with that in Jacksonville from previous storms as well, but it's definitely a threat that exists. Okay, I need to wrap this up, so I want to move into the inland impacts. We're talking flooding. These are the flooding impacts that we're going to see from this storm. Notice along the upper or the northward side of the track is where we're going to see these terrible rain amounts. Extreme rainfall flooding may prompt numerous evacuations and rescues. Rivers and tributaries then may overwhelmingly overflow their banks in many places, with deep ditches becoming raging rivers. There's a lot of info in here. Floodwaters can enter numerous structures within multiple communities, some structures becoming uninhabitable or washed away. So this basically means the rainfall, which could be anywhere from 10 to 15 inches of rain, is going to fall very quickly. And we've seen in the radar data, I can turn on the radar here just for a moment. There we go. It's already raining in these areas. See this? It's already raining. Homosassa Springs, heavy rain. That's saturating the ground. So this area in purple is going to be the area where we have a tremendous amount of rain. I'll back up here a little bit. And there's just intense. You can't even imagine the intensity of the rain around the hurricane as it comes ashore. It could be dropping 4 or 5 inches of rain per hour along this path. So flooding is basically assured. In the red areas down to the south, I'll turn this radar data off because I I don't want to just make this a confusing mess, and I'll even turn the initial wind radii off as well. There we go. So here in the middle of the state, the purple area is going to be extreme flooding potential. That's Sarasota, Tampa, Clearwater, Lakeland, Orlando, Deltona, up to Daytona Beach, Port Orange. All these areas in here, Land O'Lakes, Lakeland, Florida, have a very high likelihood of flooding. In the red area, there's a high chance of flooding as well. The potential for impacts or major rainfall may prompt many evacuations and rescues. Rivers and tributaries may rapidly overflow their banks in multiple places. I think you get the picture. It's the same thing down to the south, where heavy rain will cause rapid flooding. That is for the flooding. Now I want to talk about tornadoes. We do have potential for tornadoes. You've seen, and I'm going to turn the tornado threat on, and I'm going to also turn on the live tornado warnings. These are active tornado warnings right now. So this red area are going to see numerous tornadoes and tornado warnings. This is the right quadrant of the hurricane. It's the dirty side. It's the side that produces the most tornadoes. Up here in the orange areas and down towards Miami, there's a lesser chance, but not a non-zero chance. And up towards the yellow areas here, we'll see a lesser chance of tornadoes as well. So the red area is going to be under the gun for the next 24 hours as this storm approaches and makes landfall. These tornado warnings will be issued, and these tornadoes will be moving very quickly, and in many cases be embedded in such intense rain you won't see them. I just talked about the wind threat going across the state. The wind threat is real. It extends across the entire peninsula. The purple area, we can expect extensive damage. There's no sugarcoating it. A Category 3 hurricane making landfall with Category 4 wind gusts is going to produce a lot of damage. And then we have the surge risk. We talked about that surge risk. The colors are coded there. You can stop the video anytime you want and take a look at any of the graphics after hearing how I've described them, and identify where you live and see how it may be impacting you. That's the surge. The flood risk. The flood risk is great. The purple area, extreme flooding potential. All of the culverts, anywhere that normally floods is going to flood, and areas where you think that's not going to flood may indeed flood because of extensive rain. Now, the Water Authority is trying to manage all this rain, but when it's coming down so quickly, there's nothing you can do but watch it rise and hope that it doesn't come into your home. And now I just have a couple of tips to round this out for you, because those of you who left the coast may have just gone 10 miles inland, 20 miles inland. Try to get some sleep this afternoon if you're inland. The tropical storm force winds will be periodic as they increase during the day. The reason is because when the hurricane moves closer, you're going to hear the wind pick up, and it's going to be very difficult to sleep. The winds will howl. I've been through Hurricane Hugo in 1989, and it is really disturbing to hear that kind of wind. So also, I recommend you sleep in your clothes, because if you hear a bang or a boom, a tree falls or something, and you need to move quickly, you're already dressed, and you can get up and you can move. If you need to, if you've stayed and you're in a condo, and you're at the 10th floor, the 17th floor, anywhere in Tampa or St. Petersburg or anywhere in Florida, and you hear any noises or you hear a window break in your home, prepare a closet, an interior room, bathroom with no windows location. Put your valuables in there. Bring necessary medication in a plastic bag. Important personal documents. Put chairs and cushions in that room so it's ready. If you need to run in there because something happens, that room is ready for you, and you've done something with your time waiting for the storm to come through and done something constructive. Put valuables and sentimental items in your dishwasher and seal it closed. Don't start it, but put them in your dishwasher and seal it closed. Remember, a dishwasher is waterproof. And remember, make sure your phone and your devices are fully charged. You will lose power if you're in the area where we showed high impacts. Bring water and food. Have a weather radio and a lantern or a flashlight. LED flashlights are the best. They last longer on the batteries, but a flashlight is a flashlight because power will go out, and a lot of this is going to happen at night. And move items like computers away from your windows and cover them with a trash bag. Tie it at the bottom so at least you know that that's covered and it's waterproof, and hopefully off the ground if you think that you may have any water in your place of business or your home. So that's it for this update. We do have a serious and significant storm that's heading towards us. It's a Category 4 hurricane right now, and we'll keep watching updates from the National Hurricane Center. We'll do another update later this afternoon, probably around 5 o'clock, maybe a little bit before, but the official Hurricane Center's update comes at 5 with their official forecast. We base all of our information on the Hurricane Center's official forecast. That's why I rarely show model data and things like that, because they're just models. The National Hurricane Center absorbs all those models. That's what we do as meteorologists, and they come out with the official forecast, and that's what we communicate. So please stay updated. Thanks for watching this update. This is for the All Hazards Consortium Sensitive Information Sharing Environment, where we can share this information across as many platforms and with as many people as possible. I'm Dave Jones with StormCenter Communications and GeoCollaborate. Thanks so much for watching this update. Please take care of yourself and take care of your neighbors.